All right, so we're back here once again. We just did the Alabama preview about an hour ago, and now we got the Ohio State National Championship preview here. And I had to get my off the ball colleague, the pod father, the VP of it all, and the host of the Buckeye Remix, my guy Jeff. What's going on, Jeff?
Hey,
How are you?
man. It's been a pretty good week so far. I'm excited for the game Monday. I appreciate you having me on. I like to do a show when I can show my team colors a little bit and get to be a little bit of a fan, even though I always give everybody my honest opinion, but it's fun to be a little bit of a fan from time to time.
Yeah, especially in this, with it being a national championship, this is a great time to kind of enjoy and just and this, especially out of all that has happened this year. So, and that actually leads to my first question on here. So, just your thoughts on the season, of just this journey so far.
Man, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, everybody knows the story. Ohio State played 6 games. There was argument about whether they didn't look outside of the Michigan State game, which barely even counts. They didn't look great in any of the games, but they got in on what people thought of them, what they were predicted to do. They changed the rules, twice for them. So to make it easier for them to get in, because the Big Ten, wanted them to get in the Big Ten championship game. They play a Big Ten championship game. It's not a great showing as far as going into the playoffs. You know what I mean? They've essentially had to just resort to the run and out athlete Northwestern. Not every, but most Ohio State fans weren't super, optimistic about the playoffs, even though we figured we would get in. We had a couple games canceled through the season. We didn't play the huge game against Michigan, first time in 100+ years. Really up until about halftime of the Sugar Bowl, it was a pretty, I won't say disappointing season, but it was a bit of a letdown, from what we wanted to get, but we understood that. And then, they play honestly, I'll tell you right now, I think they played the best game that I've ever seen a Buckeye team play, considering their opponent, considering how well they did. And so then out of nowhere, you have one of the greatest games in Buckeye history. So it erased what was a mundane season. So we're living on cloud 9 around here right now, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's been, like you said, and the thing that we're, even here, especially, we talked about it in the summer where we didn't even think we were going to even have a season, especially on the Big Ten, on their end. So definitely.
I should open with that. I mean, I did a story for the Off the Ball Network about wow, Ohio State's not playing. Me and Mo Murphy both, we're in the dumps about it, and once they came around and they found a way to have a season. They talked. There's so many things that go into it that and we barely had one, and now here we go. We get a shot at the national title, and I don't think anybody can argue from what they saw last Friday night that we deserve it. It makes no sense to anybody. What's up, Mo?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely in that convincing win against Clemson. Absolutely. So I want to get your thoughts on on Alabama. Just your thoughts, just the things that you've seen with Alabama, strengths, weaknesses, and just your overall take on your opponent, the Crimson Tide.
It's a lot of the same old story. It's team speed, obviously, athletes across the board, NFL players everywhere. This is a little different offense than over the past years. Mac Jones is a stationary quarterback. That is not a negative. That's just what he is. I think he had negative rushing yards for the year. He's mobile enough. He's mobile enough in the pocket to get it done. Throws a great deep ball, and he's got the receivers, to take advantage of any lapse in defense. And you cannot talk about Alabama without talking about the Heisman winner, Devontae Smith. What an amazing player. What I see from them is, and they're much like Ohio State, any of the top teams, Clemson, Ohio State, any of these, we're talking like the real high-end programs. Alabama doesn't have to get crazy creative on offense. They get mismatches because of talent, and that's fine. That's what Ohio State does. That's what Clemson does. And if the thing that you see him do is they move Smith or Michi or Waddle, if Waddle's healthy when he's around, they run them guys around, and when they finally get a matchup that they like, it's a touchdown. I mean, it's plain and simple. If you got if you got a linebacker try to cover him across the middle or something, it's a 40-yard gain. They turn, Smith turns what I consider like, I think he gets 25% more yards on every time he catches the ball than most wide receivers in the country. It's amazing how he explodes up the field and up the sideline. And then, of course, the Surtain Jr. Or the second, I believe it's Surtain the second. Great player as an outside corner. Both their corners are pretty good. Now, this is a weird Alabama team because it's funny because they've given up a lot of pass yards this year, and it gets you excited. You're like, oh, you can get to this this defense. But when you start looking at their team stats for the year, they're not that much different than every other team. So they've had a couple games like Ole Miss, the Florida game where they gave up a ton of yards, but they haven't given up a lot of points. And if you watch the Notre Dame game, I mean, they just smothered them. They just tackle well and they're in the right position. It's they're very good team as always. They're extremely well coached. You know what I mean? Nick Saban's probably the greatest of all time at this point. Sarkisian's done a good job. But it's athlete to athlete. It's a mismatch for almost every team they play for sure. I would lie if I said that I saw a quote unquote a weakness. Outside of, I don't know, every now and then they'll give up a big play, in the passing game, which is a little different than usual, but it's not a weakness.
Absolutely. And then our guy, Steven, great question to ask you, Jeff. So essentially, how much does Waddle change your opinion on the outcome?
I don't know. As far as change my opinion, I'll honestly say not a lot, only because I've thought for a few weeks he was going to play in this game. I didn't know it was going to be Ohio State, but I thought Waddle was back. I think it was it might have been the Auburn game where he was kind of bouncing around on the sideline and, looked healthier, because I can even remember like he was getting excited and thinking, whoa, that dude, needs to take it easy on that ankle or whatever. And that's when they kind of started hinting that if they make it to the championship game, I believe he was eligible last week. I can't quite remember if he had to. So I always kind of counted on him playing. He's obviously a great receiver. So as far as change my opinion, not much. As far as scare the crap out of me, a lot. That's an NFL receiving core. And Ohio State's similar to that. I don't think they take much of a step back when you're talking about Olave and Wilson. But for sure, our we'll talk about it in a minute, the keys of the game and stuff. I mean, nobody's going to lie, our secondary is not great, especially in man-to-man. And we talked about these guys creating mismatches. And then now if you've got, Waddle, Smith, and Michi out there, that's a problem. It's a real problem. You gotta tackle these guys or you're in big trouble. Anybody that plays Alabama, tackle. I can guarantee you that.
Exactly. So, you also alluded to our point. So essentially, what are in your opinion the keys to victory for Ohio State?
Well, it doesn't change from the Clemson game. They have to be able to keep running the ball like they're running it right now. They're averaging, pushing 300 yards average running the ball all year. The last two games have been phenomenal. Big Ten championship game, well over 300 yards. I think 400 and some yards. Last week, another 400 yards. They absolutely have to. Football anymore is not, hold the ball for 10 minutes and try to run out the clock. But in a game like this with explosive offense like Alabama, you either have to score every time and you have to be able to chew clock, much like Ohio State did against Clemson. I mean, Clemson and Alabama are similar teams. It's hard to believe it now, but they were before Friday. We considered them neck and neck, right? So yeah. It's the same thing. They've got to be able to keep this running game going with Sermon, because that has really brought the linebackers, into play and created some mismatches. And then our receivers, especially our tight ends, you've seen what our tight ends have done the last couple games. Like, it's really, helped their play by taking some of the pressure off, of the passing game. And, and of course Fields has to play great again, which I have no doubt he can. One of the best in the country. And then I just said it, tackle. Our corners can't just cover Alabama straight up. The two things have to happen. I consider two parts to when you're talking about pass defense. You got to be able to cover, and you got to be able to run your, secondary, your defense, your schemes. But the defensive line also has to be able to speed that clock up. If Alabama gets over 2.5 seconds, and pushing 3 seconds, if you give that to Mac Jones, Ohio State will probably lose the football game. You cannot give those receivers time, especially Smith. He is so great at like running one route and he breaks that off and it's a touchdown. You have to keep him in the first route. You can't give him the second window. You have to speed up, just much like they did with Lawrence last week. If anybody watched that game, they really sped up and moved the pocket and got him throwing. So you absolutely have to do that, or this Ohio State defense will not hold up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also Stephen had another question as well. Who has the better offensive line?
You know what? I believe if we're just looking at last week, which it's hard not to, I think Ohio State's offensive line overall is better. But I tell you this, Alabama's offensive line, you don't touch Mac Jones. I believe he got sacked like 3 times this year, and I don't even think I'm kidding. You don't touch Mac Jones. You don't hurry him. You don't pressure him. You don't get near him. So their pass protection is bar none. It's much better, not much better, but it's better than Ohio State's. Ohio State's looked great last week, but I would say in the run game, I'd probably give the edge to Ohio State as far as pure, run blocking. And then even if you figure in I think our downfield blocking is a little better. But they're both really good. But if it becomes into, if it's a quarterback duel, I give Alabama the edge as far as pass protection. Like Mac Jones, he doesn't move and he doesn't get hit. It's really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing, like you said, the keys of it, and where like you said, even with a Mac Jones that isn't a mobile guy, he's a kind of a statue in the pocket.
Oh yeah,
kind of still have a clean jersey. It's something that's very amazing.
It's crazy what they've done, that the protection, and it's a lot of it's his decision making and things like that too. And Najee Harris, like, he has such an outlet. You talk about a key to the game. Like if they lose track of Harris, it's another big blow. Like it's another way you're going to lose because Jones hits him as an outlet, and that guy, always makes the first guy miss. He gets an extra couple yards. He gets, it seems like he turns every outlet pass into 12 yards and a first down. He's just a real great all around ball player. I really enjoy watching him play.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in your opinion, who is the X factor for Ohio State?
For Ohio State, it's actually I'm gonna go with a guy that has, he's had a tough season. He gets targeted a lot. I'm gonna go Sevyn Banks because he's not, at this point, he is not a great cover guy. And they attack him even more than they do Wade. Even though Wade, everybody knows, the story. He hasn't had the season that he or anybody else thought he was going to have. But Sevyn gets picked on. But the thing about Banks, he's a bigger, tougher, pretty tough corner. He's a pretty physical guy, good tackler, when he gets a hold of you. And he just has a way, like, he had a big interception last week. He's just been around the ball a lot. Every game he's got a little bit better. And, he'll get burnt, and they go after him a lot, pick on him a lot. But I think if he can hold up, that'll be huge, because it's probably mostly going to be Waddle, some form of that. We're talking about one of the best in the country, even coming off an injury. So, he's got his work cut out for him, and Alabama will go after a weakness. So I think that, I think Sevyn Banks, as far as the X factor, like if you tell me Monday night about midnight that Sevyn Banks played a great game, I think Ohio State had a pretty good chance to win. Oh yeah, I mean Garrett Wilson, but I don't even know if Garrett Wilson's an X factor. That dude's, that dude's great. He draws so much coverage. He is a really talented receiver. He does a lot of things to help the other receivers out. That's why him and Olave together, it's a problem, because if you watch a lot of either one of their long touchdowns, typically a safety is peeking at the other guy, or shading too far that way. And, leaving, if you watch the play where they Fields accidentally overthrew Olave last week, would have been a touchdown. It was exactly that. That safety was, worried more about Wilson, and it opens a lot of things up. Garrett Wilson's a heck of a ball player, and he's great with his hands. Like, he's a true all around receiver. I would say him and Waddle are very comparable. I don't think that's too crazy to say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Surtain versus Olave. They're so different. as far as I think Olave is fine against anybody with the ball in the air. I think his ball skills are as good as anybody in the country. He doesn't need a lot of space, which is good because Surtain doesn't give you a lot. But what Surtain does is he tackles really well. Physical corner. It kind of reminds me. I was a big fan of his dad growing up. Obviously, he played. Not growing up. We're closer to the same age, but he played for the Dolphins, and really one of my favorite players of all time. But just real tough guy. But what I like about Surtain that he does is he comes up. He comes up to to help. And those little outlet passes and stuff, like he's there. To take those away and make the extra tackle. But that is a heck of a matchup. But man, in football now, you very seldom have one-on-one matchups. There's almost always safety help on these guys. But both these teams are going to have to decide, how much they trust their corners in this game, or they might both have 300 yards rushing. There's a lot of there's probably at least close to 6 NFL receivers that are going to play in this game that we know of. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the next thing I want to ask, which is funny because, and like I did with Alabama, it's so weird in these spots where I look at Alabama as kind of the poster child of having unsung players, and even Ohio State when we looked at the Cardale Jones effect a few years back.
Yeah.
And even though you guys have set the bar when it comes to unsung players on both sides. So I'm not like I was telling Tony from the Bama Insider. I don't expect like a Tua Tagovailoa. I don't expect essentially with that situation a Tua or also Cardale Jones. But who do you see in this matchup that could be the unsung player for Ohio State?
Well, I'll give you one on either side of the ball. I mean, it's tough to say with our offensive line right now because of the rotation, and nobody's going to pick out one offensive lineman. But a couple of the freshmen that have stepped in have been great. Like Paris Johnson's done a great job and stuff. But I'll give you a couple of offensive guys. I think that Jackson Smith Enigma could have a shot to steal some yards because we just talked about the coverage of trying to cover Olave and Wilson and maybe give him a little more help. And that might be, we haven't exploited a lot. Last week we went the tight end. I would have told you Rucker, last week, but everybody, after the game he just had, everybody kind of knows, you know what I mean? So this could be like our H-back game. And that kid's a really good football player. And he's one of those guys that can, they just irritate you because Fields, might be, he can dump it off for 6 yards and it turns into 12. And those are just backbreakers, first down run. So, Smith and Jigba could be good. And then on the defensive side, man, this kid's got something to him. Me and my guy, Jay Stevens, talk about him all the time. And that's Proctor for Ohio State, the safety. He makes a ton of mistakes. He's not great, but he is a ball hawk. He really enjoys playing football. He attacks the ball, and I think that it could be crazy that at the end of the game we had no idea how good Proctor was, just because I feel like he's just wants to play this game. As far as unsung guys, that's one on each side of the ball. Proctor and Njigba, I think could really make a name for themselves for outside of the Ohio State world. Well, Trey Sermon, yeah, I don't think he's unsung at this point.
And then also in Stuart's question, as far as how big will Sermon be in this match?
It's everything. I don't think that's Master Teague is back this week, but I think we'd be crazy to think that they'll try anything other than what they've done the last 2 weeks. They are following the Ezekiel Elliott, 2014 pattern. It looks the same. He almost looks like the same type of runner. He's fresh. And if that's because of the, short season, whatever, but he is fresh. He's really in a zone right now. So he's absolutely, if once again, if you tell me he's going to have 50 yards, I'm worried. If you tell me he's going to have 300, then obviously we're in good shape. He would have had 200 last week, except for a penalty against Clemson. I mean, it's just, he's really on a run right now. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it's one of them. It's I think seven banks takes the cake just because I think that's cool. But Master Teague's pretty awesome. It makes me a little uncomfortable because there's something about it. But yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I like him too. He's a factor in this game too. Everybody assumes that they're just not going to use him because of what the role Sermon's on. But Teague has had more breakaway touchdowns. And Teague's got over 400 yards rushing this year, and people forget he's even on the team. And they only, like I say, they only played 6 games. He's got over 400 yards rushing. He's had some breakaway. Tough guy. Really like him. He's going to play more. I think he's going to play more than people think he will. Yeah.
So the question I really want to ask now, and the final one, it's prediction time. So,
man,
I want to. So it's like I do expect a score, but I kind of wanted your thoughts on how the game gonna play out, kind of the tenor of how the game will play out in your opinion, and I'll score at the end as well.
Yeah. I don't think either one of these teams slow down. I really think they both know what they want to do. It's Alabama's a weird team. When I was looking at them this week and like looking at the game against Notre Dame, like I saw the game and I know what they did, but man, you can't find a stat that says that. They're almost, if you look at the stats outside of the score on the Alabama Notre Dame game, they're even. Alabama really throttled it down in that game. It's kind of a weird, as far as like their yardage and everything was all the way. They only scored 31 points. That sounds crazy. In college football, that's nothing. But they also didn't have to, so it's odd. But then you go to the Florida game, to where they average 50 a year. I think it's 49 point something points a year. I mean, this team can score. That's what they do. So I have no reason to think that it won't. I think it'll be a high scoring game, especially these championship games. With all that's probably not too far. These championship games with the extra breaks, every time there's a kickoff, I mean, they get a 5-minute break. These games take what? I mean, they're up to like almost 4.5 hours now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But when you can rest like that and call plays like that, you tend to have the chance to exploit defenses more. So yeah, I would say that if I had to guess I would say it'll be in the 80s. I really do. I think both teams will. I mean, watch that game. It was what they scored. They would have scored 57 points. Them and Clemson and Ohio State scored 60 points at halftime. The other year, you know what I mean? In their game, 60. Like it's crazy. So I guess it would have been 63 points and a half. So to think that it won't be at least an 80-point game, to me, is naive. The quarterbacks are going to play. This will be a quarterback game for sure. I don't think anybody can just grind it out. I don't think that's the type of game we're looking at. But I got to tell you, last week I couldn't have been more wrong about anything that happened in that game. The Alabama game, I was right on.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, and one of the things, and we kind of talked about this off air, and even when we kind of talked about about the preview as far as, and then also the whole situation with Nick Saban's daughter, the tweets about all that type of stuff. And Stu would also bring up this point where rumors of the game is being postponed to next Monday instead of this Monday. Do you think it'll be postponed?
I don't, and mainly because unless they, I mean, I'm not saying they won't. We've seen them change the rules for Ohio State a couple times. But unless they would really change the rules, it wouldn't matter. Whoever tested positive this week is out for at least 17 days. So next Monday doesn't change anything. If anything, you're going to have more people out. Like it's not going to get better. As far as them trying to do it for Fields, from what everybody's hearing, Fields is fine. He's going to play. Ryan Day says the team's on schedule. Yes, we're going to have people missing, but they're going to be missing next week too. You know what I mean? Like a week doesn't help.
That's true. Like you said, because now, like you said, you have to be out in most cases 10 to 14 days almost.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, anybody tested positive, like say Monday, is still out the next Monday. Like you would have to postpone it for 2 weeks, and I don't see any way possible they're going to do that. Then it'll never stop. Then nobody's going to wind up playing. The more time these guys have, and the more. It'll just keep spiraling out of control. So I really think the game is going to be played Monday night, and it is what it is. I'll tell you right now. If we don't know who's going to be missing yet. We won't know until a couple hours before game time. And we're hearing around here that it's a position group, which is scary because I don't think you can't go without any one position group. You can't unless it's I don't even know what. There's nobody you can do it without the whole group. So yeah, it is. I mean, it's worrisome, but I also understand that that's just the way it goes. Everybody's had to deal with it. It's just a bad time to deal with it. So we'll just have to roll with the punches. What I will say is, as of now, the spread's still at 8, Alabama, which means that Vegas doesn't know anything, which is a good sign that the team's probably gonna be mostly together. I know people think that's crazy, but they know if Justin Fields was one of them right now, that line would probably be 12, 13 points already. That'd be my guess.
Right, because Vegas knows everything. Vegas will know before we all know.
Absolutely. You realize that's a real thing. Yeah, you start talking about money, they know, and they were right about the Ohio State game last week. They were dead on.
Right, and like you said, if there's any type of drop in that, then there's some kind of
absolutely. If a bunch of money starts going on Alabama, then you start getting nervous. But as of now, we're hearing all systems go, and we'll play with who we got.
Yeah, because at this point, because you're thinking, what, it's Thursday now, you would assume they're already there.
They should be getting close. I don't know how they're traveling for this without media days and stuff. I don't know. I mean, I know the Sugar Bowl, man, they got there like that day or the day before. Like they didn't spend much time at all there.
Which, yeah, and also this is another question as well. So you think Sark getting the Texas job will affect his prep for this game as if he has one foot out the door?
Well, I don't necessarily know that it's a negative effect, but it has to affect it. Like getting to one of the biggest jobs in the country has to take away from your time. But once again, I said, like, I'm not saying that he's not a good offensive coach, but they don't have to put in a whole new offense for Ohio State. It's not like we don't have a shutdown secondary that all of a sudden is going to take away Devontae Smith. Like, I think his game plan will be throw it to Devontae Smith and win. I mean, I don't think he needs a ton of extra coaching. He'll be just fine.
Absolutely, and definitely appreciate you, Jeff, for coming on.
Oh man, it's my pleasure, man. This is a lot of fun. This is the first show I've done, I think, since I'm sure I've done another, but this is the first preview show I've done. So I'm starting to get a little nerves. I'm getting excited, but all in all, I consider this a good season. This is one of the first times that if we would finish the season on a losing note, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I really think that it'll sting for a minute, but I can't complain about what we've got compared to, in August we weren't going to play. So.
Right. And that's funny. Like, and I remember we did the show like right after the cancellation.
Yeah.
And then it was like, and now we're sitting here pretty much essentially about 6-7 months removed from that. Essentially, about 5 months removed.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
All that nature. Who's counting? But for us to be here talking about Ohio State and national championship is something that, like you said, we didn't think it was going to ever happen. But yeah, so Jeff, where can they find you on social media?
Oh yeah. You can find me, you can find me on Twitter at jhunt006. I get on there and, irritate, college and NFL fans all week long. I don't try to, I just do. You can find me Jeff Needs Sports on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I believe it's J Hunt Podcast, things like that. But Facebook, Twitter, go check out my, I do an audio podcast. I do a lot of these live shows. Me and Coach do, several shows together. So just go check out Jeff Needs Sports on Facebook and the Off the Ball Network, of course. Go to the website. I just put out what I thought was a really fun little article on my top 5 bowl performers of the 2020 season. That was a lot of fun for me. I don't know spoilers, but I might have had an interest in it, but so go check out all the guys' work, man. Everybody's really killing it right now, and we're having a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And once again, man, definitely appreciate you, Jeff, for coming on. And
always, man, you're the best.
Good luck on Monday, man.
Absolutely. Go Bucks.
Yeah. So this has been a special Couch Coach Live National Championship preview with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Our guy Jeff from the Buckeye Remix, also a fellow Off the Ball Network colleague of mine, and appreciate it.
It's the best, man.
Yes, sir. And we're out.